You're about to listen to one of the early episodes of this podcast, back when it was called Let's Talk About Stress. In this one, I share effective ways to process stress, which is so very relevant to all of us. So I hope you find this useful and you enjoy it. It's nearly 10 years since my burnout experience, and I believe that it wasn't necessary for me to burn out, and it's not necessary for you either. In this podcast, my guests and I share our real-life experiences with burnout. We get into the science of stress and share actionable tips on how to prevent burnout and how to recover from it. I'm Hannah Holden, ex-management consultant and burnout survivor. I work with management consultants to help them avoid and overcome burnout. I help them to get intentional about their choices, rebuild their energy, and embed new healthy habits so that they can get back to loving life. Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Stress. And today I want to take a slightly different tack, and I want to talk about some of the theory around stress so that you can begin to understand what's happening inside your body as you experience stress. And then we can look at ways that you can use that knowledge to reverse it, to take a conscious control of how you're feeling and what you're doing. So I believe that one of my superpowers is to be able to take a very complicated topic and really boil it down and simplify it and make it digestible for people. So let me see if I can apply that superpower today and take this enormous topic and boil it down in a way that's really useful to you. So I've recently been reading a book called Burnout, and they talk about the stress cycle. So the authors are Emily and Amelia Nagoski. And the book is called Burnout, Solve Your Stress Cycle. So they talk about our stress cycle, and let's explore that from the way that they've described it. So our bodies have not really developed at the rate that our societies and our technology has developed at. So and you've probably heard this before, we're living in bodies that were made for caveman times. So let's step back into caveman times and what did that stress response evolve for? So clearly it was there to keep us safe, and we would spend the majority of our days in relatively safe conditions, and occasionally, maybe once or twice a day, have something more significant to worry about. And when that happened, our brain would take in an input and say, okay, this isn't safe. Maybe let's take the extreme tiger alert. And so we think that we're about to be attacked by a tiger, and the body responds to that. So the brain is sending signals throughout the entire body using the set of nerves which are part of the sympathetic nervous system. And that sympathetic nervous system is effectively our flight and fight mode, also freeze in some cases, but yeah, we often refer to it as the flight or fight. So we're now in this flight or fight mode, and that signal is traveling through those nerves out to many, if not all, of the organs of our body and telling each one to do something slightly different. And what it's doing then is, to the heart, it's saying pump harder, pump faster. To the lungs, breathe faster, we need more oxygen. We need to get ready to fight or to either run or to fight, right? So we need to pump oxygen to these muscles. These muscles need to be ready to outrun a tiger. But there are also other signals going to other parts of the body. So to the digestive system, shut down, stop. Digestion is not a priority. To the reproductive system, shut down. Reproduction is not a priority. We need to outrun a tiger. So all of those kind of optional systems get shut down, and that does include the relationship with the immune system is complicated because in some ways it promotes an immune response, but in some ways it actually diminishes our immune system and our immune response. So that's a little bit more complicated. We can go into that another day if we like. We've received this stimulus from the environment that we're in danger. We've sent the signal to our body that we need to get ready to run or to fight, and the body is responding. And then, whilst some of this communication is via the nervous system, like I just mentioned, a lot of this is actually via the the chemical blood chemistry and our hormones. And so we're creating cortisol and adrenaline, and those are in turn communicating to other parts of the body what we should be doing. So about 2% of the communication that happens between the brain and the body is via the nervous system, and 98% of it is via our blood chemistry. So that's why it's important to understand what's going on with our hormones through all of this. Now, let's say that we survive the tiger attack. So we outrun the tiger, or maybe we slay the tiger, and we then, very relieved, and we go back to our tribe, to our friends and our family, and we explain what's happened, and we all celebrate, we all laugh, we release all of those stressful chemicals that we were experiencing through these social interactions, and we have completed our stress cycle, and we are now no longer pumping any of that around our system. So we have processed the stress. So that's what these authors refer to as our stress cycle. We know, however, that in the modern world, we don't really come across tigers very often. We come across deadlines and difficult individuals and having difficult conversations, and so it's far more kind of theoretical, some of these stresses that we're exposed to. But the stress response is generic. So the way that your body responds to stress is the same regardless of what that stress is. So if it's a tiger that's broken free from the zoo, if it's the bus, if it's a late email that you meant to reply to and you forgot to, the body's response is generic. So whilst there are many, we could go on forever about all the little things that cause us stress, and sometimes big things. And there are, the list is endless of things that can cause us stress, but the response in the body is generic. It's the same chemical reaction that's happening. The organs are responding in the same way. The reproductive system is being switched off, etc. It's all of that is the same regardless of the type of stress or the source of the stress that you're experiencing. So I wanted to talk about ways that we can consciously address and complete our stress cycle today. Now, many of us will still experience stress even after the stress signal has gone. So let's say that this is about a difficult situation at work and a difficult conversation that you've had to have with somebody. You've been worrying about it for weeks. Maybe it's happened today and it didn't go quite as well as it might have done. You're still dwelling on it. So stress can be caused not just by those external stimuli like the tigers, but also by our thoughts, our memories, our projections, as in our projections into the future of what we're anticipating to happen. Our stress in today's world is caused by, so many different sources. And we don't necessarily always complete that stress cycle because some of these things are just lingering on. And so let's look at the ways that we can do that. Now, even when that conversation is over, the stress might not be over. The stress is still there in the system. And I recently went onto Facebook and asked friends and contacts on Facebook what they do to deal with stress. And it was really interesting because almost everybody came back with something to do with exercise. So a nice swim. Somebody else came up with something a bit different. We'll come back to that in a minute. Exercise, a run. What else have we got here? Out on the mountain bike, a Zumba class, going for a walk with a dog, a walk in the countryside, any kind of exercise, meditation and yoga. So meditation, that's another option. Breath work and meditation were also things that got listed, and seeing and venting with friends and cooking also came up. So that's really interesting. Now, the number one way to process your stress, according to this book, Burnout, is exercise. And that is clearly echoed by the feedback I received from my friends and family on Facebook. And the reason that physical exercise is so has that effect on your stress cycle or on your body is because through exercise we are producing endorphins, and also during exercise we reduce the levels of the stress hormones, so our adrenaline levels and our cortisol levels come down, and we're producing endorphins. So those are the chemicals in the brain that are natural painkillers and mood elevators. And so that's what's happening when we exercise. Clearly, take your pick: the walk, the yoga, the swim, the run, whatever it is that works for you. But that's what's happening. That's why exercise is the most effective way of processing and completing your stress cycle. And think also how that mimics our having to run from the tiger. So our body is used to experiencing a level of stress, and our body is used to saying, right, let's fight, let's run, we're going to do something here. So the body really understands that conversation that you're having with it when you take it out for exercise. And it's getting, the reduction in adrenaline, the increase in endorphins, etc. So yes, so exercise is the number one way. Other ways to complete your stress cycle include positive social interaction and laughter. And now these two are connected. And one of my friends did mention on Facebook that they like to get together with friends and just, put the world to rights. So yeah, positive social interaction. Now, again, this is changing our blood chemistry. When we interact with people in a positive way, our oxytocin levels come up. We turn down the stress response from our sympathetic nervous system, and we are processing the stress. We are also introducing positive body chemicals such as oxytocin. Other ways, so the breath, breathing, and consciously slowing down our breath is another very effective way. So when we do this, we are switching on our parasympathetic nervous system. So I've just described the sympathetic nervous system, that fight and flight mode of our autonomic nervous system. Its counterpart is the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest mode, and I find that breathing the fastest way to make a conscious step from one mode into the other. So I've actually written my 5 top tips for how to switch off your stress response and feel instant calm. I'll include a link with this if you're interested in those top tips of mine. Some of them are about the breath because I think the breath is just so powerful. I also love the Huberman Lab Podcast, which is hosted by Andrew Huberman. And I thought that I'd share one of his tips with you today. So he likes to talk about the physiological sigh, and so it's super simple, and I thought that we could practice it today. So what it involves is splitting the inhale into 2 parts. So we sip the inhale into 2 parts, and then one long, slow exhale. So it looks a bit like this, or sounds a bit like this. Now, I'm intentionally making that quite noisy for your benefit. It doesn't need to be as noisy as that, and I'd really love you to try it right now. So 2 sips in. My preference is through the nose. In through the nose and out through the mouth is my preference. But you can play with that and see what works for you. If you've got a blocked nose, then obviously that's not going to work, so do it through your mouth. And the exhale, I like to do it as if through a straw, so I'm kind of making a very small hole in my lips as if I had a straw in my lips, and I'm blowing out through that. The reason I do that is because it will control the rate at which I'm releasing the air. So I'm not kind of wide mouth and sighing the air out, but releasing it very slowly through that kind of small straw. So let's try this together. So 2 sips in, and then out through that just small straw in the lips. It's almost a whistle. Now, what that mimics is how we breathe when we cry and also how we breathe when we laugh. And we've just talked a little bit about laughing, and laughing being one of the ways that we can release our stress response or complete our stress cycle. And crying is one that I wanted to come onto as well. Whilst it would never be my number one recommendation for how to deal with stress, it's certainly very effective. And I wanted to talk about why it's so effective. And that is because when we cry, and these are emotional tears, so clearly there's water in our eyes sometimes our eyes are watering, and that's where the body's just trying to clean out the eyes, clear anything that we've got in the eye area. But when we're crying for an emotional reason, then stress hormones and other toxins will be present in our tears. And so we're actually flushing out some of the chemicals, the neurotransmitters, the hormones, etc., that's in our blood chemistry. We're releasing some of that through the tears. And researchers have also found that crying releases oxytocin and endorphins, so that there are other reasons why we would feel good. So oxytocin is that love hormone. It's the hormone that mothers of newborns in particular experience when they're bonding with their newborn. It's called the love hormone. It's a bonding hormone. And endorphins are obviously those body's painkillers and mood elevators that we talked about when I was talking about exercise. So they're created in the body when we experience exercise, but they're also created in the body when we cry. Affection is another way that this book on burnout talks about how we can complete our stress cycle. So similar to laughing and positive social interaction, and the example that they give is the 6-second kiss, because apparently if you're kissing somebody for 6 seconds, you can't possibly do that with somebody that you don't feel safe with. And obviously that would also be releasing oxytocin for us. The last one that they talk about is creative expression. Now, I have mixed feelings about this one. I think if you're generally in a reasonable place and you find the creative arts something that's inspiring for you, and you like to write or you like to create, and that could be, collages or clay work or painting, if that's something that's accessible for you, then great. But if you've listened to the first episode of this podcast, then you'll know that for me, that was something I attempted to do when I was near burnout, and I just felt like I had nothing to give. I didn't have any creativity left in me. So great if that's an outlet that works for you, but perhaps if you're too close to burnout, as I was, that may not be an option for you. So those are that's our whistle-stop tour of the stress response and the stress cycle and ways in which we can actively complete the cycle. The book suggests that we do something along these lines most days, on the basis that we're experiencing stress in this world most days. And I encourage you to have a play with that physiological sigh. I think that it's really simple. And you can use it in most scenarios, right? There's not many scenarios where you can't breathe, so you can just discreetly breathe in that way. So just one quick reminder on that. That was 2 sips in, preferably through the nose, and 1 long exhale through the lips. I'm also going to share my other tips, and I love the Huberman Lab podcast. So they are 90 minutes long, each of his podcasts, so they're quite a commitment, but and they're full of science, which I love. You might want to check those out. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks so much for listening. I am Hannah Holden, and this is the Let's Talk About Stress podcast. Thank you. These podcasts are here to help you manage your stress and burnout, and your feedback is really valuable. So please rate this podcast and also drop me a note with any questions, suggestions, or feedback that you might have. One of the most common questions I get asked is, where should I start? And I believe that the best place for you to start is to learn how to soothe your nervous system. I've created a free download with instructions for 5 different ways that you can do just this, and all of them work pretty much instantly. It's called the Essential Toolkit for Management Consultants. You can download it now at www.hannahholden.co.uk/essential. One last thing, it's the legal language. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of your doctor, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.